What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex Podcast. I am your host, Chris Raybon of the Action Network, and this is our number 2 running back fantasy preview episode where we talk about all the RB2s that you want to draft this year, guys you should avoid. Just kind of breaking down where we have guys ranked. Here to do it with me, one of the top rankers in the game, Sean Kerner, the odds maker. Sean, what's going on?
What's up? So we are less than a month away from the Hall of Fame game between the Jets and Browns, which will open with Zach Wilson handing the ball off to Israel Abanikanda. I can't wait. But that also means shit is getting real.
Oh, yeah. And the running back position is always where it gets real.
Yeah.
We have that frozen pond tier, as we like to call it. So before we get into, all the backs, I'm just kind of wondering where do you kind of see the frozen pond tier starting for backs this year?
I mean, honestly, probably RB13 with Travis Etienne and Kenneth Walker. I know you like those guys. I do too. I think they're very talented, but that's kind of where I think you can have some serious questions with, their potential rookie backups eating into more of their workload than we think. Jahmyr Gibbs, again, very talented, but is he going to see any goal line work? How is he going to, hit top 15 without those goal line touches? So all these backs from like RB13 to RB24, I love talent-wise, but there's concerns about every one. So that's just the range that you got to be careful. I'm usually drafting a running back before the top 12 are off the board, and then just, hitting the other positions. So I think this is the range where this is usually where the frozen pond is, and that's where it is again this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it starts even higher. I'm concerned about Josh Jacobs this year. I mean, coming off all those touches, and it gets kind of shaky after that. But I do think there is a lot of value in the RB2 tier if you do just wait. So a lot of times the reason I say I like guys like ETN and guys at the top of that range, that's more if I miss out on an RB1, because I don't think you should go overboard and kind of draft, reach for a guy early if you can get, Kelsey and stud receivers and whatnot. So, but as far as the RB2 value, there's a lot of guys. I mean, the difference between, a guy like, going in the, like Rachaad White, who's RB22, and a Samaje Perine even at RB38. Like, I don't think it's as big as people think. So there's a lot of guys in that kind of RB23 range that I do think are values. And if I did kind of go with kind of a fade running back and go all receivers and guys like that early, I wouldn't feel like a zero RB, I guess you would call it. I wouldn't feel too bad about it. I think I would just have to go, probably 3 guys in that 13 plus tier, but from 13 on, but I feel comfortable kind of waiting on these backs. So I think it's going to kind of be interesting to talk through. We'll talk through some of the guys we kind of like in each tier, but just to set up the ADP over the last couple of weeks in best ball 10s, ETN is 13, Gibbs 14, Kenneth Walker 15, Dalvin Cook still without a team 16, Aaron Jones is 17, Joe Mixon 18, Javonte Williams is 19, then Miles Sanders is 20, Cam Akers 21, Rachaad White up to 22, Damian Pierce 23, J.K. Dobbins 24. So let's kind of go back and forth here. Give me a guy you like in this RB 13 to 24 tier, which is the true RB2 tier, at least by ADP.
Yeah, so with this tier, I kind of like whoever falls to me. And right now, that's Damian Pierce. His ADP is kind of plummeted the past couple weeks, I think, because he's down to RB 23, 24, depending on what date range you look at. But he's my RB 19. So I think he's solidly, mid-range RB2. And while I do think, having a back like Devin Singletary around will prevent him from seeing those 80% plus rush share games that we saw last year, or even a 50% plus routes run rate like we saw last year, I still think he has a ton of upside. He flashed it as a rookie and think he can overcome more of a running back committee this year. So he's one of the few backs in this range that could also, post RB1 numbers if his backup were to go down. That's one of the other things that I consider when kind of like rating these guys. But overall, the Texans should be better this year, specifically their offensive line.
Yeah.
They added Shaq Mason from the Buccaneers. They spent a second-round pick on a center and Juice Scruggs who should start right away. That was a need of theirs. And they still have quality tackles and, Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil. So it could be a much better environment to run in this year. They should be better with CJ Stroud under center going forward. And Stroud himself isn't really a rushing quarterback. He said so himself. So he seems to be willing to check down his running backs, which should only help. So while there's question marks about, every running back in this range, I still like the upside we get with Pierce. And I don't think he has that low of a floor. Like, I don't think Devin Singletary's going to leapfrog him necessarily. So the fact that he's now going at the bottom of this range is why I like him, but it seems to shuffle every week now. But as of now, I like getting Pierce in this RB23, RB24 range.
Yeah, I think the Texans could actually be a lot better than people think. This is no longer like a tank roster because they traded away, their early picks to Arizona next year. So like they don't really have an incentive to tank. They got their quarterback. So they did add, just veterans kind of around the roster. You mentioned guys like Shaq Mason on defense, guy like Jimmy Ward. So they're trying to be competitive this year. So I don't think this will be like, a 2-14 team where you're super worried about, the lead back. Obviously still should be a team that's under 500. I think the win total is 6.5, but that's kind of priced in already and more. So yeah, I don't mind Pierce either. And just a very talented back. For me, I like Joe Mixon in this range. Obviously still has to get his contract. He might have to take a pay cut, but I still think if he's on this roster, he has a pretty high floor. Last year he was still in terms of per game points, a top 15 running back, actually higher than that, top 13. So looking at him this year, he averaged 15 carries per game last year, but the year before 18.3. Now you take Pirine off this team, they might not necessarily feel comfortable giving, rookie Chase Brown or Travion Williams as many snaps as they did for Pirine, who they specifically liked in, third down situations, things like passing situations, things like that. So Mixon could actually see a bump in his workload from, compared to last year. So I think Mixon's getting slept on, still on one of the best offenses in the league. So, we saw, what, he get 5 touchdowns in a game last year. He still has that kind of upside. So I think he's getting slept on. Obviously make sure, he's on the roster and that we'll get closure with that at some point this offseason. But if he's there, it's not like we expect them to go out and sign somebody because they're having issues with their cap as it is. So I think it's going to be Mixon's backfield in Cincinnati. So I think he should be going closer, to that top 12 if he, all things being considered.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it was 5 touchdowns in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were up so much that, they put him on ice. But yeah, I think, Pirine not being in there anymore is similar to, Kareem Hunt leaving, the Browns with Nick Chubb ceiling. So I think Mixon has a massive ceiling this year. And last year, specifically, he's going to see more receiving work. And last year, his last 6 healthy games, he saw a target on 31% of his routes run, which is just elite.
Yeah.
So if he can start catching 4 to 5 balls a game, which I'm not saying he will, but that's in his range of outcomes. If, like you said, they don't trust Chase Brown or Travion Williams, then we're talking potential RB1, potential top 5 upside, and you could still get him. Where's his current ADP?
RB 18.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I have him RB 13 right now in my median projections, but again, his receiving usage could be even higher. So, his ceiling is still a top 10 running back.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that even with, Pirine kind of cutting in and Mixon still averaged 15 carries and 4.3 catches a game. So that's 19.3 touches. And that 4.3 catches a game was a career high. And that's with Pirine, kind of infamously taking some of that pass down work. So yeah, I think Mixon's getting swept on, and he's still 27, which, that's kind of like where running backs peak. And then, on the other side of it, you start going downhill, but it's not even like he's old or anything like that. Yet should still have another season in his prime. So yeah, I think this could be a great value for people that waited on running back, because like Mixon's a guy who could, based on past performance and this year's projections, could easily be an RB1, and he's a guy you can get, you could wait until 3 rounds before you think about taking him in a lot of drafts. So love Mixon. Give me somebody else you like in this tier.
The other back that I can get behind, again, I don't feel great about anyone in this range, is Miles Sanders around the RB19 range. Just because I think we can be confident that he'll be a workhorse back. He's getting 13 million guaranteed. Chuba Hubbard's his backup. This offense and the offensive line won't be as good as the Eagles. He's going to be much more of a workhorse back, which will help make up for that potential lack of efficiency, specifically being more involved in the passing game. Which is huge, considering he's going to be on a team that's going to face a lot more trailing game scripts. So I don't think he's going to be as game script dependent on this team. I think he's going to run a lot more routes in this offense. So backs in this range, that's kind of, what I look for is like, I don't think his floor is that low. So I think he's pretty safe around the RB20 range. So again, if you kind of miss out on getting one or two backs early on, Sanders is a nice like safety net. And then I'll, take swings for the fence with running backs outside this range. But I think for the frozen punt here, Miles Sanders, in theory, I think he seems one of the safest bets.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Seeing an uptick in workload, got the big usage, and Carolina. It's not that they're expected to win a ton of games, but they're in a pretty easy division with a reasonable schedule, so they shouldn't be getting necessarily blown out. And if he's going to be in there on more third downs, they talk about Blackshear may factor in as well in the pass game, but still, I think Sanders has that chance to be a workhorse back, and that's what you're kind of looking for in this range. Whoever is going to kind of jump from somewhere in this tier into that RB1 tier, it's probably going to be because they're not coming off the field as much as maybe we projected at the beginning of the year. So I think Sanders definitely qualifies as one of those guys. For me, I'll go Cam Akers. He's RB21. And like you said, I don't really love anyone else in this tier, but I think Akers is another one of those guys when you look and say, okay, who could conceivably, not come off the field too much? And Akers, he showed down the stretch last year that he could be that guy, even in passing situations. His last 4 weeks of the season, he was in on an average of about 80% of the passing snaps. And, that is something that we really haven't seen out of him much over coming off that injury. All the games leading up to that, his average was about 26%. So he's shown that he could stay on the field for all the passing work, and which I do think there will be, because I think the Rams defense will struggle. But, any kind of positive that happens, if the Rams, outdo expectations, or McVay just decides to continue using Akers the way he has, I think you're going to get a guy with that RB1 upside, even if the Rams are kind of not great like they were last year, because, Akers showed it even in a couple of blowout losses. He was very productive. So Akers is the guy that kind of stands out, but I think for the most part, these guys are properly rated. It's more about waiting, just, where you're kind of drafting these guys within the tiers. And I think this RB2 tier is pretty large. And so, yeah, you want guys kind of at the end of it more so than those guys a little earlier on. So Akers, I think, could be a guy that we could see, similar production, 18 to 20 touches per game that we saw down the stretch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was the RB4 over the final 6 weeks, and that was after they decided, okay, we're not going to trade him away. Let's treat him like a workhorse back. So I think he does have a ton of upside. Obviously, the floor is just, Sean McVay can be, unpredictable at times. But, they brought in Sony Michel, which I think is more of an indictment on Zach Evans. Yeah. I think Zach Evans is kind of like, he has a wide range of outcomes, similar to Isaiah Spiller last year. So maybe they just weren't comfortable with Zach Evans going into the season as the number 2. So they brought in Michelle. But I think Akers' job is safe right now. So unless McVay does something weird like last year, he should be a value at this price, because we already saw it last year. He was near a top 5 running back for the final 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and still young too. Still only it's going to be his age 24 season. So
I wonder how much some of the shit talking I personally have done over the past couple of seasons was just he wasn't over his Achilles injury, because
he wasn't.
He miraculously returned at the end of the season where he tore it earlier in the offseason. So yeah, maybe he's 100% over that. And a lot of those like gruesome metrics were just the fact that he was playing his way back into shape. So still young, like you said, and very talented. So could finally be over that career threatening Achilles injury.
Yeah, because before the injury, he averaged about 3 yards after contact. Then, that year he came back, it dropped to 2.3. And then last year it was back up to 2.8. And then yards before contact, which can be an O-line stat more, but it was 1.5 per carry before the injury. And then that year during we came back, just 0.1, like right. Barely anything before contact. So I think it was just kind of a feel, the vision. Because even last year it was back up to 1.4, which is around average. And that was with a pretty bad offensive line. And last year he actually had his most missed tackles forced per carry of his career at 0.19. So, yep. Per carry. So I think that it's kind of, the numbers kind of show that there was an issue, with kind of returning from that injury, and they kind of shot up again last year, even if you're looking at the full year numbers. And obviously they shot up even more if you're looking, last half of the year or last 6 games, last 4 games. All right, let's jump to the 25, the RB3 technically tier. And the guys in that range: 25, Madison; 26, DeAndre Swift of the Eagles; 27, James Conner; 28, David Montgomery, now at Detroit; 29, Isaiah Pacheco, starting for the Chiefs; 30 is James Cook for the Bills; 31, AJ Dillon for the Pack; 32, Antonio Gibson; 33, Alvin Kamara; 34, Jamal Williams; 35, Brian Robinson Jr., and 36, Khalil Herbert. Looks to be the leader of that Bears backfield. Who do you like in, and then P. Ryan is 37. Who do you like in this range?
Yeah, so I got to go with Alexander Madison. He's RB 25. Some recent drafts, he's, can be anywhere between RB 20, RB 25. But the point remains that he's sort of a low end RB2, high end RB3. And similar to Tony Pollard, finally getting to be the lead back with Zeke gone, Madison finally gets to be the lead back with Dalvin gone. So I think Madison still was the biggest steal in best ball drafts a month or two ago when he was in the RB 30, 35 range. But I think he's still offering value in the RB 25 range, because I don't really see, Ty Chandler, Dwayne McBride, or Nwangu eating into Madison's workload enough to matter. So, Dalvin Cook was healthy pretty much all last season, so Madison didn't get any spot starts. But in 2021, Dalvin missed 4 games that year. And the 4 games he missed, Madison ranked RB7, RB9, RB5, RB13. And I remember just making projections for those games. He's usually inside my top 10. Like he dominates, the rush attempts. He's not like an excellent pass catching back, but he gets most of the work. So he's a true workhorse back. He's more than capable of handling that for a full season. And I think the Vikings are content just letting him have the job this year. So I think running back 25 is still too cheap. I have him as my RB 16 right now. And he's one of those backs that, offers potential top 12 upside. So I think even at RB 25, we're still getting some decent value on Madison right now.
Yeah, I think he's way. I've seen him in certain leagues. His ADP is up to RB 15, and I would still take him there because I think he's just safe. As you mentioned, Tanane Nwangu is more of a returner. Ty Chandler is more of a special teamer, and then McBride is a rookie. We've seen O'Connell kind of lean on the one back. Even when he had the option of going, Cook Madison last year, it was mostly Cook. I think it's going to be mostly Madison this season. They gave him some guaranteed money. They had to cut Cook for the cap situation. I think everything we've kind of seen, I have him actually RB 14. So I would take him as like a low end RB one. If he was my number one running back, like if I missed out on the guys I like in that sweet spot, the Barkleys, the Henrys, the Chubbs, I'm actually not scared of having Madison as my RB1, considering where you can get him and the fact that you can kind of stack up on pass catchers instead early, because I just think he's another guy. Like you look up and you say, who could play, 75 to 90% of the snaps. Yep. And he's one of those guys. And that's probably his median projection anyway. I don't think he needs an injury or anything like that to kind of play that much. So love Alexander Madison as well. For me, I got to go with David Montgomery first and foremost. I think people are sleeping on him a little bit, and kind of getting that Jamal Williams role from last year, because you look at what Jamal Williams did, and he had 45 carries inside the 10. That was 16 more than any other back. And I think Montgomery was signed to take that role. And Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be, you know, the DeAndre Swift plus probably whoever they used at the third back when they were being mad at Swift. And I think it was, you know, Justin Jackson and whatnot.
Great Reynolds, baby.
Reynolds, right. So, but you know, Montgomery did get 18 mil over 3 years, 11 mil guaranteed, which is a lot for a running back. This will be his age 26 season. But Williams in the game Swift played averaged over 15 carries per game. Not much in the passing department, but I think Montgomery should be in line for 12 to 15 carries, 12 to 16 carries per game, and probably a little more in the passing game than Williams did. But, you know, probably not more than 2 catches. But, you know, going where he's going, RB 28 with the potential to lead the league in touchdown runs, I think is a value. And the downside of it, once you get to this range, you know, between Montgomery and some of these other guys, there's not really much downside in terms of the opportunity cost of guys you're passing up. They're all kind of guys, you know, committee backs, uncertain, unproven guys, guys on 2 down backs on bad offenses or whatnot. So I really like the upside here. This is kind of the range where now you're not worried about floor. You're worried more about upside. But if you look at Williams, I mean, the usage was pretty consistent. We do expect this Lion team to be pretty good this year, game script wise. So it's not a lot to hate for me with David Montgomery going to this new role. Better O-line too, much better O-line.
Yep. Yeah, no, I love this call. I think it's no brainer that he's going to get the goal line work because even Alabama didn't use Gibbs in short yardage or goal line situations. So why would the Lions? You know, he's compared to Kamara, which I think is fair when you're talking about his receiving usage, but he's 25 pounds lighter. He's just a crack under 200 pounds. So Gibbs is not going to be eating into Montgomery's goal line work. So I think that's obviously one of the more valuable assets in this backfield. And then Montgomery, I think at his current ADP, he'll beat that if he stays healthy this year, even in a 2-way committee. But he's one of the few guys in this range that offers legit top 10 upside. If Gibbs were to miss time.
Right.
So that's a huge variable in my running back chart. Because like you said, he it's a better pass catcher than Jamal Williams even. So he could be a top 10 back if Gibbs misses time. And he'll beat this ADP even if Gibbs doesn't miss any time. So I think, in this range, Montgomery is definitely a steal.
Yeah, and if he for some reason happens to have a bad game against Kansas City in week 1, like I would be trying to buy low because week 2 and 3 is home against Seattle, home against Atlanta. You know, that Kansas City game might be at their biggest underdog. Yeah, their biggest underdog spot of the year, obviously, when you play Kansas City. So, I think there's a lot to like with Montgomery. Who else do you like in this range?
So I'm going with the guy that you mentioned just outside this range. I'm cheating against my favorite here, but I love this guy where he's going. It's Samaje Perine. He's going around RB 37 right now, but I think, you know, he's going to trend up as we get closer to the season. And unless and until we get better news around Javonte Williams and his week 1 availability, I'm very worried that he's not going to be able to play the first few games. And even then they're going to ease him in. So I'm a lot more cautious when it comes to Javonte than I am Breece Hall. But, you know, Samaje Perine is more than capable of stepping up with Javonte out. You know, Perine was RB3 in weeks 12 and 13 last year, filling in for Joe Mixon. So in this range, you're drafting backup running backs who need a running back their starting running back to miss time to hit value, right? Well, we have a guy in Perine who's already looking likely to potentially give you some starts earlier in the season. So that just he's going to be offering more value than raw projections would suggest. And then if Javonte, you know, if he gets banged up, even more likely that Perine gets more starts. So he's just the first backup running back I want this season. And like I said, an interesting way to kind of pair him up would be to take a guy like Breece Hall who might start off a little bit slow. You can have a guy like Perine fill in the meantime. So I think there's a lot of different strategies you can use by taking Perine outside of the top 35 when he could be offering top 20 value in the first few weeks of the season.
Yeah. I think the only thing to watch out here is Dalvin Cook. And if Dalvin Cook signs, I mean, that means that Williams is, you know, there's probably an issue with Williams. So Perine probably still, you know, the role won't change too much, but I do think, his upside is that Javonte, really messed up his knee. It wasn't just the ACL.
Mm-hmm.
So there could be, a longer recovery window. We haven't heard amazing, we've definitely heard better news about Breece Hall, as you mentioned, than about a guy like Javonte. And this, the defense is good. You got Sean Payton. So new system, new everything. Peyton, even when Kamara was, doing his thing, they still kind of mixed in Ingram or like a bigger back as well. So like Piron could still get his, 10 touches per game, even if Williams has never averaged even 12 carries per game in a year. So I think Piron is a guy that sticks out as well. For me, for my second guy, I'll go with James Conner. He's RB27, and it's another guy. I know Arizona is projected to be the worst team in the National Football League this year, but they were pretty much of that quality last year, and James Conner was still in there being productive, and he actually had his best season in yards before contact since 2018 last year. So it's not like his vision's going down. His yards after contact has been pretty stable. And that's with a bad Arizona offensive line last year. They were bottom 6 in adjusted line yards. So it essentially can't get much worse. But Connor's another guy who's shown that you can put him in there for almost every snap. I mean, there were times when he was playing, almost every snap of the game. Now, granted, there's a new regime here, but the fact that they don't address running back in the draft or in free agency as of yet, that tells me that they're just going to kind of let Connor run himself into the ground as they probably go on this tankathon. And he had 5 games where he played more than 90% of the snaps. And that's just kind of rare to find, especially this late in the draft. And if anything at all goes right for the Cardinals, if they just keep games closer than we think, or anything like that, it's going to be all upside for Connor. So, love Connor here. Not much behind him on the depth chart, as I mentioned.
Yeah,
a guy you like in Keontae Ingram, but that's about it.
He's a nobody. But yeah, he has very little competition. And last year, I feel like we were both high on Connor heading into the year. He was RB10 in points per game.
Right.
That's more than Jamal Williams, who scored 17 touchdowns, more than Aaron Jones, more than Dalvin Cook. He still just doesn't get any respect. So the fact that you get him RB 27 right now is insane to me.
Yeah, and you're obviously pricing in some potential missed games. He's 28. He's never played more than 15 in a season. But, that's kind of every running back. And here, I mean, the upside is the games he does play. As of now, he's looking like a guy who could play, again, anywhere from 75 to upwards of 90% of the snaps. All right, let's go. So outside the RB3 range, who do you like for those guys? Let me give some ADPs. I won't give all of them, but just, the guys kind of right after. You got Charbonnet, from the rookie from Seattle, Rashad Penny, Elijah Mitchell, Damian Harris, Tyler Algier, Devon Achane, the rookie for the Dolphins at 43, Jarrett McKinnon at 44, Singletary 45, Kendre Miller, the rookie for the Saints at 46, Foreman signed with the Bears at 47, and Kenneth Gainwell, looks like the third back for the Eagles right now, is up to 48. So who do you like kind of outside the top 36, top 37 at running back?
Yeah, so once you get to this range, it's typically all backups, clear backups in an offense. So I think it's all about just ranking them when the starting running back is in and when the starting running back is out. And I do that with my RB upside rankings chart. So the first clear, most obvious one that I love, and I think this is a no-brainer, is Jaylen Warren at RB 56. So he was the RB 52 last year, despite Najee Harris playing in all 17 games. And so, Warren could carve out a bigger role this year and potentially provide RB3 flex value at times, even when Najee is healthy. That's how involved I think he could be this year. So not many backs in that range even offer that path to value. He was very good runner last year. He ranked 10th out of 58 backs in my expected yards per carry model. Najee ranked 50th. Obviously Najee is more of an innings eater. He's just, going to be a workhorse back, but I would not be shocked if Warren eats into that even more this year. But, Warren was already eating into Najee's receiving work last year. Warren was averaging 30 to 35% routes run per game. So that could go up. But either way, this isn't rocket science. He already beat this ADP last year when Najee was healthy all season. But if Najee were to miss any time, he would be potentially, low end RB2, high end RB3. So I think there's just a lot of paths for Warren hitting value here that may or may not even include Najee going down. So I think he'd just be a good backup to have on your roster that you can get super late. So I have a ton of shares of Warren right now because he's my RB43. So it's about 13 to 15 slots higher than his ADP. So just love Warren's upside this year.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on the other on our pod last time with Najee, but Warren was more efficient than him. 3.1 yards after contact per carry to Najee's 2.7 last year. Yards per route, Warren averaged half a yard more per route, 1.3 versus Najee's 0.8, and Najee gave up pressures on over twice as many pass blocking snaps as Warren did, 9% to 4%. So Warren had him beaten quite a lot of areas. So it's not inconceivable to see.
Tomlin likes him too, right?
Usually kind of like some all running backs, but
that's true.
But I mean, from what we've seen, Warren's role grew and he was efficient or more efficient than the incumbent starters. So yeah, I see no reason why he shouldn't continue to trend up. For me, one of the guys I like outside that top 36 is Tyler Algier, and you kind of hit on it with projecting guys if the starter goes down, and I think if Bijan Robinson goes down, massive upside obviously for Algier, but even if not, Atlanta was second in the league with 26.7 carries per game for running backs, so there could still be 10 touches per game, 10 carries per game, kind of for Algier in this offense. We heard Cordell Patterson's going to be more of a receiver gadget guy this year, not as much in the backfield. And, Huntley's coming off a serious injury, and Avery Williams, I believe, already went down for the year. So it could be a 1-2 punch, mainly with Robinson and Algier, and good chance Algier, Robinson could have about 17 carries a game and Algier could still have 10. So and that's not even counting if anytime Bijan goes down, you're talking about kind of a anti-fragile situation because Bijan's such a high pick, so it's going to hurt somebody in your draft if you have Algier. So a lot of reasons to like him, and he was just an efficient back on what I think is going to be a very good run offense yet again, good offensive line and everything like that. So like getting Algier outside that top 40, and especially in best ball where you don't even have to predict what weeks he'll get like his 10 touches and a touchdown or not. But even in redraft as well, because I think he's a very valuable handcuff with what it looks like to me at this point, standalone flex value as well.
Yeah, no, he's the perfect type of back to target outside the top 40 because, he has top 20 upside if and when Bijan misses any time. But like you mentioned, there is a path where he could still be an RB3 flex, even with Bijan healthy. I mean, Bijan's a generational talent. We know that. But the Falcons offense loves run the ball. I mean, they proved it by, drafting Bijan and offensive lineman in the second round. So there could be enough volume for even Algier to see 10 to 15 touches a game. So he could offer RB3 flex value even when Bijan's healthy. That's the perfect type of running back to target outside the top 40.
Yeah, I think he has more than top 20 upside if Bijan goes in. He has like 8 upside at least, if not higher.
He'd be a low end RB1.
Yeah. I mean, he was putting up last 3 games, 20 touches plus each game. So like he can handle that role. All right. Who else do you like outside of the top 36?
So I'm going way off the board here. I'm going with Keontae Ingram at RB78. So I'm putting together my chart right now, and I have different buckets for every type of back. And right now, he's probably the cheapest handcuff in the league at RB78. Now, there's a chance, he could split work with Corey Clement if James Conner misses time. But I do think Keontae has a ton of upside. He kind of struggled as a rookie, but I think he did give me Kareem Hunt vibes when he was at USC. I do think he has some potential. So the fact that he's backing up James Conner, who's only played 15 or more games just once in 6 years, Conner 28 years old. Obviously, I like Conner when he's healthy, but the Cardinals are likely going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. I don't think Connor's going to play every game. So there are going to be some times I think Ingram could provide RB3 flex type of value. So, and he's also a pretty good pass catching back, which is important when you're on a really bad team like the Cardinals. So I think just when you're talking about backs outside the top 70, he's the back that I would want, because a lot of these other backs, they not only need one injury, they probably need two just to offer RB3 flex value. And he might only need one. So again, he just has the shortest path to offering value than most of these running backs. Other backs in this range that I like are like Chase Edmonds, Josh Kelly. I think those guys are the two only other backs outside the top 70 I think are one injury away a potential RB3 flex value. But those are the kind of backs that I think you should target once you get outside the top 70.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when you look at the Cardinals backfield right now, yes, they're going to be a bad team, but they kind of project to have one guy taking a big workload, and if it's not Connor, it's going to be Ingram unless they sign somebody. So I think that their entire backfield is undervalued. Like, yes, I think the market is sharpening in the sense that we know bad teams not as much value, but we still can see bad teams if the back is getting a good percentage of snaps be productive. I mean, look at the Raiders with Josh Jacobs. Look at the Cardinals with Connor when he was healthy. The Rams with Cam Akers weren't great and he was productive. So it can still happen. And I think, you're getting some value here because no one wants to touch this Cardinal backfield.
Yeah.
Another guy I like outside the top 36 is Elijah Mitchell. He goes RB40 with McCaffrey, including the playoffs, 6 games, 10.3 carries per game, not much in the pass game. So probably better in half PPR. But still a guy who I think he's going to factor into the rotation. And if McCaffrey goes down, he's going to go back to being a top 15, top 20 running back like we've saw him be in the past when he's started games for this team. And his efficiency metrics are always very good. He's top 20 in yards after contact again last year, even better for his career at 3.6 after contact. So the only real concern with him is the durability. I think as long as he's healthy, he's going to be in there for 8 to 12 carries a game, even with McCaffrey, because this team has to run. Their quarterbacks are Purdy, Darnold, and Lance right now. We don't even know if Purdy's fully healthy. So, and the defense should still be very good. So, anytime if McCaffrey goes down, misses games, just ton of upside. So, love Mitchell here. And the best thing is in a redraft league, when he's missing games, you could just bench him. You don't have to even worry about it. So like him more actually in redraft than in a best ball type format.
Yeah, same. He's very similar to Algier, where probably doesn't have as much upside as Algier, but certainly a top 20 back if McCaffrey misses time, and he could give you some spot RB3 flex games even when McCaffrey's healthy. But Mitchell's RB40, Algier's RB42. Which one would you rather have if you had to choose between those two?
Algier, because number one, I just think he'll be a little more durable. But number two, I think there's just even more uncertainty with Bijan. Like, we've never seen him. We don't know what the role could be. Like, it could be that Bijan's getting 15 carries and Algier's getting 12 or something, which would be, more than I think we're projecting. So, I think there's a lot of upside even without anything else happening or any injuries happening for Algier, whereas I think Mitchell is kind of probably tapped out, like 10 carries per game, probably can't go much higher than that unless something happens to McCaffrey. So it's kind of a little, I guess, a lower ceiling version of Algier. But and Algier goes later, usually goes a couple spots later. So
exactly.
Algier for me. Some other guys I'll mention, RB54 is Tyjae Spears, the rookie for the Titans, and with Hassan Haskins getting into some legal trouble and being of the last regime with John Robinson, who apparently lost a power struggle with Vrabel. So now they got a new GM in there. They take Spears. He should be the backup, the clear-cut backup to Derrick Henry. So that I think is of some value because, if you're concerned about Henry and his age or just the workload, this guy could come in and handle, essentially handle that same workload, because I don't think Haskins is long for the roster for a prominent role. Wasn't great last year either. So I think he's a guy to pay attention to as well. All right, that is going to wrap it up for our RB2/RB3/sleeper running back pod here on the Fantasy Flex. If you want to hear us talking the top 12 running backs, that episode is already out. And we'll be back next week to talk some tight ends. So stay tuned for that. You can find Sean on Twitter at @the_oddsmaker. You can find me at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this shmoney.